Gentleman to 60th, Delegate Farrell, your vote's not registered. Delegate Farrell. Clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On that question, there are 100 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the resolution adopted. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Is there further unfinished business? If not, bills on third reading. For what purpose does the gentleman with 32nd, Delegate Holstein, seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to return to the second order of business for the purpose of an introduction.
Are objections heard? No objections are heard. The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, sir. Joining us in the North Gallery, we have some students from the gentleman from the 52nd District, actually, from Chesapeake Elementary. If they would please stand, including my cousin, Wyatt Taylor, and his dad, Aaron. So if the House would please make them feel welcome. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Clerk will please report the first bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 668, increasing amount of certain controlled substances persons may purchase annually.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Lady from the 49th to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill increases the maximum annual limits of ephedrine, pseudoephedrine, and phenylpropanolamine that a pharmacy can dispense to a person or that a person may purchase themselves without a prescription. The current yearly limit is 48 grams. This bill will increase that to 86.4 grams, which is 12 times the monthly limit of 7.2 grams. This makes the math more smooth going forward to equate annually. This bill just increases the amount of those medications that can be dispensed in the state while keeping the annual purchase limit lower than the federal mandate. I urge passage, please.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman, the 20th, Delegate Foster is recognized.
Does the Vice Chairman yield for a question?
Yes.
What three drugs were those again?
It is ephedrine, pseudoephedrine, and phenylpropanolamine, which is now outlawed actually in humans because it causes stroke and is used as a urinary continence drug in veterinary medicine.
All right, thank you.
Welcome.
Is there other debate on the bill? If not, yes, gentleman from 54th, Delegate Pushkin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just briefly wanted to explain why we had the policy in place to begin with to limit the amount of ephedrine that one could buy in a month or in a year. And it was to cut down on the amount of homemade methamphetamine in West Virginia. And while I don't think anybody could say there's less methamphetamine on the street, it's not as much of it is being made here. There are less explosions, apartment fires, people being injured from the homegrown methamphetamine that was made in the state before these restrictions were put in place. I just want the body to know what they're voting on.
Is there other debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 91 ayes, 9 nays, and 0 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for Senate Bill 668, increasing amount of certain controlled substances persons may purchase annually.
Are the title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 4299, permit teachers in K-12 schools be authorized to carry concealed firearms as a designated school protection officer.
Ladies and gentlemen, this bill was advanced to third reading yesterday with 2 pending amendments. The chair will ask the clerk to report the first of the 2 amendments.
Delegates Foster, Smith, and Kirby move to amend the bill on page 3, section 11A, line 56, by striking the words, may designate one or more elementary or secondary school teachers, administrators, or support personnel as a SPO, and inserting in lieu thereof the following. shall designate one or more elementary or secondary school teachers, administrators, or support personnel as a SPO if they have applied, met all of the requirements, and are otherwise eligible.
Ladies and gentlemen, the question now is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Chair recognizes the sponsor, Gentleman 20th, Douglas Foster.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just an explanation of the amendment in this section, we're changing it from a may to a shall, but only in the situations where someone who is a teacher, administrator, or support personnel has applied, met all the requirements, and is otherwise eligible to fulfill this position. So we are changing from a may to a shall, but only if they have applied and meet all the other requirements and are otherwise eligible.
The question still is on the amendment read by the clerk. Is there debate on the amendment? Gentleman from the 51st, Douglas Fast, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I believe that this amendment supplements and confirms the true intent of this bill, and therefore I concur and ask adoption of the amendment.
Gentleman of 79th, Douglas Hanson, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the sponsor of the amendment yield to your question?
Yes.
The way the bill is written now, it's permissive, right, for a school system to opt into this program?
That's correct.
And with your amendment, would that still be the case?
No, it would be if the program, if somebody applies and meets all the qualifications, then they will allow that teacher or school personnel to operate as an SPO.
So the local school board would have no authority anymore to decide whether or not to opt into this school protection officer program?
On the school protection officer, no. There are many provisions in the bill where if the person who is an SPO does something improper, where they can pull that license afterwards. But if they meet all the qualifications to enter that program, then no.
Okay, thank you for yielding. Mr. Speaker, to speak to the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized.
One of the key points of this bill, as it's originally been proposed, has been providing local control. One of the arguments for adding another type of armed security into our schools has been that some of our school systems have not been able to take advantage of the existing types of armed security that are authorized in state code, and that this new type of armed security would provide them with an alternative that they may find more affordable. They could opt in, but as it was explained to us in committee, it's an opt-in process. It would preserve local control, which is really important to me, and I think should be important to everybody here. School boards are elected for a reason. They're close to their constituents, and if people disagree with their policies, they could vote them out. What this amendment would do is if any teacher or employee of a school system decides to take the training and offer themselves up as a school protection officer, they would be forced to be allowed to carry guns in kindergarten through 12th grade. This amendment would force the school system to allow guns into schools with school protection officers, even if they have made a policy decision to go another route with the SROs or the PROs or the school security officers. It overrides that local control, and that's why I oppose this amendment.
Is there debate on the amendment? Is there debate on the amendment? Gentleman from the 59th, Dr. Shamlin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to have to rise in opposition to the amendment. I support the bill, but I think the amendment takes the bill and turns it from a permissive may to a mandatory shall. And to me, someone who served on city council for 12 years and sat on local boards, I have great respect for local officials. And I know both sides are guilty of using the argument of local control when we like what local officials do, and then we go the opposite way when we dislike what they do. But these school board members are elected. They're chosen by their community members, and they should have the right to opt into this program if they determine that it is beneficial for them, or to choose not to participate if it is within their judgment that it isn't. So I like what Thomas Jefferson, this quote is ascribed to him, but others have debated who actually said it, which is, government closest to the people governs the best. So I think we need to respect local authority, local control. I support a bill that's permissive. The amendment makes it mandatory. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 44th, District, Kirby's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you like this bill, if you believe that this bill is overall good for the people of this state, particularly our students and our teachers within our school systems, then you will support this amendment, because I will tell you what's going to happen if this amendment does not pass. This is merely going to change some ink on a piece of paper within the code. It will have no substantive effect. We all know our local school boards, and from my estimation, we might be lucky to get half a dozen to actually implement the policy that we're looking to pass here in just a few minutes. If there is a teacher or school personnel that is willing to take up the mantle of defending themselves in their classroom, then let's give them the right to do that. Because in practicality, we all know what's going to happen. In the majority, the overwhelming majority of our school boards, they're going to deny each and every application. And so it'll have no substantive effect. Take ourselves back to May 24, 2022. As we're sitting at home and we're looking at the TV, or we're looking at our phones, and we scroll across the bottom of our phone or the bottom of our TV that 19 students and 2 teachers were killed in a 4th grade classroom. If Texas had had this bill and it had been permissive, and that teacher had asked to carry and wasn't permitted, and this tragedy would have occurred because of that, do you think that legislature would have lived with themselves? Do you think they would have called a special session and gone in and adopted the amendment, this very amendment to their bill, the very next morning? Of course they would have. So let's not forget that tragedy, and let's not forget that when the police showed up, they waited an hour and a half to apprehend the suspect, as he, unfortunately and tragically, murdered 19 students and 2 teachers, methodically, one after the other, as the police stood down. Any teacher, any school personnel that's going to pick up the mantle and take on this responsibility, which is voluntary in nature, so it is permissive, that allows individual teachers to make up their own mind as to whether or not they think this is good for them or their classroom. But if we allow it to be quote-unquote permissive with the school boards, then you might as well not even pass this bill. So if you like the bill, then you have to adopt this amendment. Otherwise, you're just changing ink on the page within our code book. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 13th, District, Heckert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As we all know, the teachers are there every day. Every minute of the school is in session. Police do their best to get there as fast as they can. 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever it takes them to get there as fast as they can. This amendment will make sure that our kids and grandkids are protected and have a chance of survival. Without this amendment, I agree with Delegate Kirby. We need to pass this amendment and move on. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 76th, District, Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, I take issue with the argument, not with the gentleman, but with the argument from the gentleman here about this bill does nothing if you don't pass this amendment. And in reality, and I'll speak to the bill later, but this is right now allowing another option than school resource officers, another option than school security officers, which is another bill that we've passed. And I've heard the argument from several people, well, what if they don't have the money with the school boards? And again, that puts it in the perspective of each individual county and county school board doing what's best for them and not force-feeding a solution to them. And in reality, if you're saying, well, what if this would have happened? What if that would have happened? And tragedies are terrible. And the stories we've heard, fortunately, we haven't had one in West Virginia up to this point. But that does not necessarily make good law. I mean, to that extension, having teachers carry it, why not have children carry. Hey, let's teach them at 8 years old, and they can all carry concealed. I mean, there comes a time when you have to differentiate what's safe, what's proper, what's effective, and what's really going to save our children. And there are lines here, and this is a line too far. So for that reason, I oppose the amendment.
Is there other debate on this amendment? Is there other debate on the amendment? Gentleman from the 60th, Doug Farrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And gentleman from Raleigh County, I think one of the co-sponsors, please yield.
Yes.
Question here that on the way the amendment's written, that if a teacher takes all the classes, does all the qualifications, and then applies, then this would require that the school board has to approve that teacher. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Okay. If there's already a school resource officer based at that school, would that still apply?
Yes, sir.
If there are 2 other teachers in the building, a 3rd one, a 4th one, a 5th one, they would still have to have to abide by that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Permission to speak to the bill?
Gentleman's
Or the amendment.
recognized.
Sorry. Yeah, I concur with my colleague from Kanawha County with concerns about where we're going with this. I supported this bill, and I would still support it, coming out of education, coming down here, as it gave local control back to each of our 55 county boards of education. And I understand the intent, or I think I understand the intent of the bill, is there's some concern that there's some boards that would just never. My response to that is we haven't given this a chance to see where it's going to. We've had other bills come up in here and say, hey, we need more data, we need more time before we change or make a decision on that. And we haven't even given these boards a chance to see, how they're going to administer this. And I think that, I've been in the classroom for over 30 years. And I think we all know there's maybe people on the block you live on and things that we all have Second Amendment right to own a weapon, be able to use that. But I think somebody said to responsibly own that and use it. I know some teachers that I taught with that probably thought they were responsible, but my look on it probably think, I'm not so sure I want that person being the person that thinks they're responsible. And I'm all for teacher being able to have the ability to be able to do that in the right situation. But do we as a body here in Charleston know what's going on the ground in Calhoun County or Wyoming County or any county in between? Those boards are the people elected by their citizens to make those decisions based upon what they know is going on, boots on the ground. And yet, we're trying to dictate because we don't have enough patience up here to see if they're going to do that. I think that concerns me is where we're at there. We don't know. We don't know. I don't know. Even as a teacher, I know what I saw in Kanawha County, but I don't know what's going on in Raleigh County or in Mercer County or anywhere else in between. But I'm sure those administrators, those school boards and those people out there, hopefully, and if they don't, then if the people of that county aren't happy, they can vote them out. And furthermore, I think if we don't this year, I think coming pretty soon, we're going to move toward partisan elections in school boards. So there'll be an opportunity to even change that. So, those are opportunities lying ahead. So I just worry that we're getting ahead of ourselves here. And my biggest concern is I've worked with people that were very good, very responsible, I think would handle this well. But there's also others that I would be very concerned about. And this is not going to, we won't be able to control that here. We're going to push the button here, and we're going to open up opportunity where that person goes out and they may take and get the classes and do everything on paper that looks good. But, that personality, they think they're Rambo or whatever, or maybe they're just duelists. And the county has to give them a weapon to take into the building. I think that would concern us all. I don't think any of us, that's our intent today. But I think that could be the result if we punch the agree button on this amendment. So in that regard, I can't support it today. So I'd ask that you push a nay on this, and let's give it some time. Let's be patient, be prudent, and do the right thing here. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 14th, Douglas Foggin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I've been teaching for 24 years now. Some would argue that I've just been employed in the school systems 24 years. That may be true. But I've waited 24 years for this. If you've ever stood in front of a group of kids, 180 kids, every year, all of them, look them in the eye and tell them that you are a coward. I'm a coward. I can do nothing against a person with a gun in my classroom. When they walk through the door, they're in complete control. I can fight, but I can't fight someone that has a gun when I don't have a gun. I would probably argue with my good friend from the 44th when he said the legislators wouldn't be able to live with themselves. Until it's your kids, you really don't know. It really doesn't hit home until it's your kids. My nephews were involved in a school shooting a couple years ago. To turn on the TV and say, hey, isn't this where our nephews go to school? And my wife say, yeah, it is. I don't care if Mickey Mouse was in that school and had a gun and could protect them. I would be tickled to death. Over the 24 years, I've had to learn a lot about how to teach different kids, how to teach kids with all kinds of different abilities. And it's been a little bit of a challenge. Something I haven't figured out yet and never will is how to teach a dead child. And I know a lot of you don't agree with me, but until you're there, till you're standing there in front of those 25 kids every period, 30 kids every period, they look to you for leadership, they look to you for protection. I got nothing. I can't do it. Someone walks through the door with a gun, I can try. I train mine to run, get out, bust a window, do whatever you can to get away. That's all we got. I would like to see everybody support this amendment.
Gentleman from the 17th, Douglas Pinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to urge adoption of the amendment, and I appreciate what was just said from the teacher's perspective. As you look over the bill, as you look over the amendment, it simply states that if this school personnel meets all the other requirements and applies, they shall be. And I would submit from the teacher's perspective, I certainly understand what you're saying, but having spent the last 18 months of my time in uniform, my time as a police officer, having spent the last 18 months stationed as a PRO at Ripley High School, it's a pretty sobering thought to know that you've got 1,000 kids under your care, a campus that's spread out as big as some of your cities, with as many students as some of the cities in your municipalities. It's a pretty sobering thought to know that you're the only one there that is that first line of defense between an active shooter and 1,000 students. That's a pretty sobering thought. So I'm going to urge adoption of the amendment. I appreciate the fact that it was offered. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 47th, Douglas Longenacre is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, rise in support of this amendment. I really enjoy what my school district is doing. I enjoy what the Board of Education is doing in Greenbrier County and the superintendent. My fear, if we pass this bill, and it's likely to pass, my fear is if we pass this bill without the gentleman's amendment, it's going to leave my school board open for liability when, God forbid, something bad happens and they or a future Board of Educators in my county elected not to take advantage of this force multiplier and instead let this happen, they're going to open themselves up for liability, and I don't want that to happen to them. I want this to be a good bill, and the gentleman's amendment does just that. Thank you.
Is there other debate on the amendment? Is there other debate on the gentleman from the 100th, Douglas Ridenhour?
In my previous careers, I spent about 16 years combating terrorism, both anti-terrorism and counterterrorism. and part of that in the late 1990s, I was the anti-terrorism operations officer out in the Pacific Command, and we developed a program called the Joint Strategic Integrated Vulnerability Assessment. It was designed to identify vulnerabilities in our DoD facilities within the Pacific Command, and those stretched across the Pacific and into the Indian Ocean. We conducted about 27 different vulnerability assessments. As part of that, we had a former SEAL Team 6 member and a former U.S. Army Special Forces Delta member. We conducted red teaming as well as assessment of the Blue Force, what the friendlies, policies, and capabilities. We particularly assessed whether or not there was armed security in the facilities, because armed security was the principal deterrent to any kind of terrorist attack, and that's what we were focused on. What we understood was that terrorists will conduct an intelligence collection effort. They will identify the potential threats to their operations. They will then weaponeer those threats to determine how to attack the facility. As part of that, they are looking for any type of armed resistance, and they're identifying where that resistance is and then how they will either deal with it or avoid that target and go to another target. The goal for us, and it was a very parochial goal, was to make ourselves harder than any other facility in the area. So if there was another, and it wasn't a secret, we were going to make the DoD facilities harder than the Department of State facilities. We were going to make them harder than any Department of Agriculture facilities in that country. And we were pretty blunt about it. We want them to hit you, not us. Okay? That was the whole point, was to make ourselves so hard that the terrorists would not try and attack us. School shooters are terrorists. That's all they are. They're there to terrorize the people that are in that area, in the school. I studied, as part of my development of the JASEVA and other anti-terrorism operations, I studied school shootings because they had many of the characteristics of a terrorist attack. And what I found was they were doing exactly the same type of intelligence collection. They were determining what the target had in terms of defensive capabilities, what weapons might be available, what school resource officers, what the police response times were going to be, down to the minute in many cases, so that they understood how long it took to get into a facility, where that SRO might be. If there was an SRO, were they there at that day? Were they going to be away? Were they in a different part of the building than they were going to attack? Or, if the SRO was in a certain area, could they get to that SRO and kill that SRO and then move on to the soft targets, the kids and the teachers? So that's essentially what a lot of this is. What we're trying to do with this amendment is to make these schools so hard that these school shooters are not going to be interested in trying to attack the targets in the schools. They may try and conduct attacks in other places. We can't protect every place. And in many cases, what we're talking about with these school shooters, their mindset is such that they may try to do something that will be suicidal. My hope is they will not. But we want to make it so that there is a means to respond immediately. What we're looking at here with teachers carrying and an SRO are layers of defense. The police are another layer of defense. Okay? If they make it through the police, if they get past the SRO, the last line of defense is that teacher who may have a weapon more than an eraser or a pencil that they can throw at them or a chair. We want to give them at least the opportunity, the fighting chance to defend themselves and their kids. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman with 69th, I got Marple.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to be short and sweet. I support this amendment. I live in a county where every school has a school resource officer, either a municipal police officer or a deputy sheriff. Not every county in this state has that opportunity or that luxury. This allows school administrators, school teachers, and school custodians to take training to be armed with a gun. Short and sweet. The only thing that can stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, and this will allow it. I support the amendment and support the bill. Thank you.
Question still is on the adoption of the amendment. Is there other debate on the amendment? If not, shall recognize the sponsor to close debate on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There's very good reason to offer this amendment today, and I want to go through a few of the things that were stated here before. I know there was statements of local control. Well, what you need to understand about local control is this bill is permissive to the teacher. What can be any more local control than allowing a teacher, like the gentleman from the 14th, that cares about their students and wants to protect them, from allowing them to do it? And you got, This is something that is about protecting our kids. It's something that, so I get choked up when you think about teachers that sincerely care about these kids. And this is the, giving them the opportunity to do that. So, Mr. Speaker, I urge passage of this kid, and I appreciate the gentleman from the 14th and his desire to protect not his kids, but your kids. Please support this amendment.
The question before the House is the adoption of the amendment. Those in favor of adoption of the roll call is demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question is, shall the amendment be adopted? Those in favor of adoption of the amendment will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 79 ayes, 21 nays, 0 members absent. A majority of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the amendment adopted. Clerk will please report the next amendment.
Delegates Fluharty, Hornbuckle, Hamilton, Garcia, Griffith, Hanson, Lewis, Rowe, and Young move to amend the bill on page 3, section 11A, line 59, following the period by inserting a new sentence to read as follows. Any person designated as a SPO shall be compensated with a one-time bonus of $25,000 within 30 days of completion of all required training.
The question is on the amendment just read by the clerk. Shall recognize the sponsor, gentleman from the 5th, Delegate Fluharty.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Amendment's pretty straightforward. My amendment arms teachers with something they actually want: money. The bill does not allow for, or first off, there's no incentive, but the bill is essentially forcing teachers to work a second job without any money. So I think if we're going to do this, they should at least be rewarded. You know, a worker is worthy of his wages. And that's the premise of the amendment. It'd be a one-time payment of $25,000 upon designation and completion of all required training. And I'm happy to take questions and reserve the right to close, Mr. Speaker.
The question is on the amendment still as read by the clerk. Is there debate on the amendment? Gentleman to 65th, Delegate Martin is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the gentleman yield for a question?
Yes.
Who would be compensating them? Is it the school? Is it the local school board? Is it the state?
As they're compensated currently. So we, in the general fund, we have money set aside, which goes to the school districts and then goes to teacher salaries. So it'd be funded just like, we haven't finished our budget yet, but presumably if this bill passes, it will have a financial impact, as we know by the bill itself, even though there's no fiscal note. But the financial impact will be taken up in our budget and we'll account for it.
Thank you. Thank you for the answer. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question still is on the amendment as read by the clerk. Gentleman from the 39th, Delegate Smith is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While I wish we could provide every individual teacher with $25,000 if they volunteer for this, it's just not feasible. If those kinds of funds were already available, we wouldn't have hundreds of vacant SRO positions across our schools, across our state. While I believe the sponsors are very well intended, this goes beyond the entire intent of the bill, which is teachers and staff volunteering for the program. For that reason, I recommend rejection of this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from 51st, took it fast.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a voluntary program on behalf of the teachers and others. It is a bill not meant to be a financial burden upon the school board. I would wholeheartedly urge rejection of this amendment.
Is there other debate on the amendment as read by the clerk? If not, Chair recognizes the sponsor to close debate on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The bill itself contemplates spending $275,000 already, so the argument that we're here with this legislation and it's going to be cost-free is not a good argument. It's absolutely going to cost. If you do support this legislation, I would think you would want to incentivize participation into it. This incentivizes participation. We all know that teachers are vastly underpaid in this state, and we're not running legislation that I've seen lately to actually affect that and impact that, but this does. This is a bonus that we're telling them, hey, if you volunteer for this, you're going to get paid for your work, which is a principle that I thought the GOP relied upon. This actual amendment comes from the GOP down in Georgia. They introduced this amendment to their legislation, so it's something that's very fundamental, principled, and a worker is worthy of their wages. I would appreciate support for it, and I would ask for the ayes and nays, Mr. Speaker.
Debate on the amendment has been closed. Roll call votes demanded. Is the demand sustained? Demand is sustained. The question is, shall the amendment be adopted? Those in favor of adoption will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 13 ayes, 87 nays, 0 members absent. Less than a majority in the affirmative. The chair declares that amendment lost. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the clerk will please read the bill a third time as amended.
House Bill 4299, permit teachers in K-12 schools be authorized to carry concealed firearms as a designated school protection officer.
Question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Are there objections to allowing the sponsor to explain the bill in lieu of having it read in full? No objections are heard. Gentleman of 39th, Douglas Smith, to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. House Bill 4299. This bill amends the current code by allowing K-12 teachers and administrators and support personnel to be designated as school protection officers, SPOs, and to carry concealed firearms or self-defense devices in any school in the district. The bill provides that any teacher or administrator seeking to be designated as a SPO must make the request in writing and provide proof that he or she has a valid West Virginia concealed carry permit. They shall then submit a certificate of completion of the West Virginia Department of Homeland Security Division of Justice and Community Services demonstrating that said teacher or administrator has successfully completed the training requirements for the Prevention Resource Officer Program. Any county board wishing to enable a SPO to carry a firearm in a K-12 school is required to provide written notice to the West Virginia Department of Homeland Security. That notice shall include identifying information and confirmation that the SPO has passed his or her Department of Homeland Security training program. The designation of SPOs is discretionary and revocable at any time by the county board for any reason and is not subject to the grievance processes, but may be appealed to the Secretary of the West Virginia Department of Homeland Security. The Secretary of the West Virginia Department of Homeland Security shall maintain a listing of all persons designated as SPOs and shall make that list available to all law enforcement agencies in the county where they serve. That is the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
Question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Lady from the 56, Doug Young, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield for some questions?
Gentleman does yield.
Thank you. And this bill didn't come before my committee, so apologies, but I have quite a few questions. So So this is teachers, administrators, or support personnel, is that right? I don't know if you're on.
Yes, yes.
Okay, do they have to be full-time employees, part-time, substitutes? Is that contemplated?
That's not addressed in the bill.
Do you have any thoughts on it?
If they're a staff member, they're a staff member. If they're a teacher, they're a teacher. Even a part-time teacher. If they've gone through the training.
Okay, just as long as they've gone through the training. Okay, and it says that the SPO may not be permitted to allow any firearm or device out of his or her personal control while that firearm is on school property. What does personal control mean?
Concealed carry.
So is that like on their body?
On
Do they
their
have to
person.
be like touching it at all points in time? I didn't see any definitions.
It's on their person, concealed carry.
So if they set it down to like use the bathroom for
They'd
some
be in
reason?
violation.
Okay. What would happen if they were in violation?
The bill says that they can be removed and fired from their job.
Okay. And so then on the next page, it goes on to the things you have to have proof of to become an SPO. You have to have a valid concealed carry endorsement or permit issued by the county that they request to be an SPO in. So what if I live in Putnam County, but I work in Kanawha County? Where do you get a concealed carry permit right now?
You get your concealed carry permit from the county that you live in.
Okay, but you have to have it for the county that you want to work in. So how does that work?
Then they might not probably be able to volunteer for that.
Okay, so they can only be people that live in the county that they work in.
The bill doesn't address that.
Okay, okay. If somebody completes, I know that it can be revoked for any time, but upon the initial completion of the training and all the different things, they automatically get it, or is there like a initial yay, nay?
Can you rephrase the question?
Yeah, so when they have their concealed carry permit, their training completion, I think that's it. When they have those two things done, they automatically become an SPO, is that right?
The effective amendment that we just passed gives them the, if they go through the training, they request the permission, then the school board shall let them be armed.
But they'll automatically have it. There's no like
They
initial...
do not automatically have it, no.
Okay, okay. And then in the appeal process, they have the right to appeal. I don't see anything about an appeal process. So what's that process look like?
They appeal to the Department of Homeland Defense, as it states in the bill.
Right, but what's the process?
That would have to be worked out.
Is there rulemaking in this bill?
There's none.
Okay. And then it looks like the JCS, Justice and Community Services, will have the list of all the people by school districts, and they can give that out to law enforcement. Does the Department of Education have that list?
No, the principal and the principals and the county and superintendents will have.
Okay, but will there ever be any way for us or anybody else to know how many of these SPOs there are?
No, that's for the safety of the teacher that's concealed carrying and for the safety of the students.
Okay, okay. And then when they're developing the curriculum's developed by the Justice and Community Services section. Were they consulted on this bill?
Yes, they were.
Okay. Did they mention that they might need more staffing to complete this?
No response on that part, no.
What is it?
I said no, they did not respond to that part.
Okay, okay. And so the training looks like it's 24 hours and then 8 hours. And then there's a piece that says you may be able to do 4 more hours. Is that in the initial training or in the requalification?
Give me a second here. The 4 hours is, no, it's for...
I'm on page 6 at the top.
That's just for the school district board of education or governing body of a school from requiring an additional 4 hours, not to exceed 4 hours of training. So it could be specialized training within that district that the school board determines that they might want to have in addition to the mandatory training.
Okay, and so is the mandatory training, is that in person, online? What does that training look
It's
like?
in person, should be in person, because there's going to be weapons qualification, there's going to be tactical drills.
Okay, and will folks from around the state have to travel like to the police academy for that, or will they do it in their own county?
As stated in the bill, it says that the training will be conducted with the local law enforcement, so that way the local law enforcement who are the responding emergency services to that school are getting their training with that teacher in their local area.
Can you tell me where it says that? Because I see that it says that they shall develop the curriculum with them to provide instruction and training, but I don't see that it says where that training is going to occur.
It doesn't say directly where that training is going to be done. It says that it'll be conducted with the local law enforcement.
Okay, and then they do an annual behavioral assessment, is that right?
Yes, they do.
Okay, who pays for that?
Well, the same way that it's paid for right now for the teachers.
I don't know how it's paid for. Do you know how it's paid for?
I do not know exactly how it's paid for, but I know that that's there for the teachers already.
Do teachers currently have a behavioral exam
I
once a
think
year?
they do.
I genuinely don't know. Okay, and then my last question is about the funding. So it looks like we're gonna do $5,000 per county school district. Is that right?
That's in the bill.
Okay, so at the beginning of the bill, it says that any school district within the state can apply for these SPOs. But then later on in this program funding section, it says we're going to do $5,000 for any county school district. And then it's even further broken down to say if all counties participate. We have 57 school districts, not 55. So what about those other 2 school districts? Are they eligible?
It was 55 counties.
Right, but we've got 57 school districts.
The bill says 55 counties.
Okay,
so it should cover.
So the other 2 aren't going to be eligible?
It'll have to be fixed over on the Senate side then.
Okay, so, but in this version, the school for the deaf and blind, they're not covered?
It's not addressed in this bill.
Okay, thank you so much for yielding.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker, just briefly, we've already heard what I knew was going to come up, which is the only thing that stops the bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And I'm not sure that I fully agree with that, specifically because if that were the case, the United States would probably be the safest place on earth, but we have more gun violence than anywhere else at all. I do think we can all agree, though, that teachers are definitely the ultimate good guys, without a doubt. Ultimate good guys. I was raised by teachers. I love teachers so much. We've had some teachers speak to this bill already, and I can't imagine what they go through on a daily basis, and I appreciate all that all of you teachers do all the time. I would also probably say that every single one of us 100 has a pretty high level of comfort with firearms. So I don't want to get that misconstrued that we are anti-Second Amendment. I am certainly not anti-Second Amendment. And there's even some teachers that sponsor this bill. I think that's okay and fine. I think it's like 20% of people in the country think that teachers should have guns is what I read. I'm worried that with such little training, that these folks are not going to be accurately prepared to do this. I think that in this legislature, we've already passed really good stuff to keep kids safe in schools this year. The school guardian bill to allow those law enforcement officers who have like 25 weeks of training to come back into the schools and protect our kids. I love it. I think it's great. I worry that this bill is a little reactive. I can't support it. If I don't know where the guns are in my young children's school, that scares me. It scares me a lot. I don't know. I can't support it, but thank you guys for listening.
Gentleman, the 88th, Dr. Hillenbrand.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Many, many years ago, as a young married naval officer, was expecting our first child. My wife, who grew up in a suburb of St. Louis, made it pretty clear to me toy guns were off the table. Figured this is pretty hard. How do you do that? God put one on the end of each little boy's hand. There you go. But hey, you've all heard this statement about happy wife, happy life. So I didn't pursue that, and we just let things go. Over the years, my two sons grew up. They joined scouting, ended up getting merit badges in shotgun, riflery, things like that. I thought it was rather ironic. And living here in West Virginia, she actually, my first wife, got a concealed carry. Whoa, wait a minute. What happened to the woman that didn't want toy guns? She had a concealed carry. For those that don't remember their history, in 1974, there was a horrendous school shooting massacre in Israel. It's the Malat massacre. 115 people were taken hostage, and 25 hostages and 6 other children were killed. Israel put in place a new policy that in the intervening years prior to the events of this past fall when Hamas attacked Israel, had protected the schools such that there had only been 2 school shootings in those over 44 years. The 2 times there were school shootings, they were stopped by armed teachers. Part of Israel's program and policy for protecting their students is arming their teachers. I know it's hard. We like to believe we live in a very safe world. Unfortunately, there are bad people out there. Last year, when we left this session, my wife and I decided we'd take a little bit of vacation. We went down to Nashville. Literally, days after arrival, just a few miles from where we're staying, school shooting. Where did that school shooter attack? They didn't attack some armory. They didn't attack a police station. They attacked a school that they had scoped out and realized there was nobody going to shoot back. This is a bill to protect our children. I'm going to be a firm vote on this. I don't know how you could vote against it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman at 25th, Doug Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the lead sponsor please yield for a question?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. I'm looking here on pages 6 through 7, line 143 through 146, and it speaks to the legislature, our body, appropriating $275,000 to all 55 counties. That is accurate?
Yes.
But I also noticed that this bill does not have a fiscal note.
No, it doesn't.
So I'm confused on the $275,000, but having a zero fiscal impact.
The fiscal impact is stated right there in the bill. If there's not a fiscal impact statement, there wasn't one done. But
Wasn't one done.
The statement of how much this costs is right there in the bill.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Permission to speak to the bill?
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Everyone in this body, and this is something I do know for sure, everyone in this body wants to protect our schools, wants to protect our children. I will tell you that somebody who has led a college classroom, somebody who has led a daycare full of children sub 10 years old, I get where you're coming from, feeling the pressure to some of my teachers in here to be able to protect. This piece of legislation in front of us today is incomplete. It is incomplete, and I can't for the life of me figure out why we as a people, we are so anxious to be tribalized that we're not going to look at a mature way to fix what we all want to strive for a solution for. So we're going to go over here and say, oh, this party is just for the guns, and this party's not for the guns. You know, the one thing I heard, we haven't talked about the kids. We're all human in here, as are the teachers. So what happens when that teacher leaves their firearm in the bathroom? What happens when that teacher leaves their firearm on their desk, when they run out to go help another teacher with a problem? We haven't talked about properly training our students on gun safety. We haven't discussed that. We haven't taken the time to truly talk about the unintended consequences. This piece of legislation is incomplete because we're in a hurry to say who is the protector. Two things that we haven't talked about enough, and I hope everyone's listening, Mr. Speaker, is mental health. There's two reasons. There's two reasons for all of these things that all of us hate. One is mental health. And until we as a body, all 100, Democrats, Republicans alike, address in a robust way to help with our mental health issues, we need to pause this conversation. That's the number one thing for these school shootings. You know what's number two? Want to take a wild guess? It's hate. It's hate. And so, Mr. Speaker, what I'm going to ask this body is when we push these bills that perpetuate hate and rhetoric, these bills that say that because you live a different lifestyle, I don't like you. Because you look different, I don't like you. That's what society has become today. We are doing that for the sake of politics. You can do it if you want to. I'm talking the truth out here.
State the question.
The gentleman's not on the bill at all, sir.
I'm with God today.
What was the response?
Go ahead, Pinson.
The gentleman's not debating the bill at all.
Okay, does the gentleman wish to continue on the bill?
Yes, sir, and I will continue. And speaking to the bill, while we have these massacres, delegate, is because of hate. And we push divisive bills and culture wars. It perpetuates hate. And until we, as a body, stop doing those things, these things will continue no matter how many guns you have in schools. That is what is keeping this going. So we as people, we as Americans need to do better and stop this silly stuff and push this country forward. Vote this bill down.
Gentleman from the 68th, Delegate Phillips.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I hope I'm the only parent in this room that has gotten the call that your child's school's in lockdown, there's someone in there with a gun. I lived through that, and I will tell you, in that moment when you get that call, your blood runs cold, and the worst things possible go through your mind. And this happened. We had a student held an entire classroom hostage in a school that had my son and my niece in it. And in that moment, all I cared about was that, all I hoped for was that there was someone there to protect my son. Unfortunately, there wasn't. The teacher did everything she could, got the kids against the wall, said if they come in, we'll try to take them down. But I would have felt so much better the moment I got that phone call if I had known there was at least the possibility that the classroom that my son was in, the teacher could have said, you all get against the wall, I've got this. I hope everyone will support this bill. Thank you.
Gentleman, the 44th, Delegate Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to first start off by thanking the sponsor of this bill and the co-sponsors for having the bravery to come forward, because I know this is obviously not an easy topic. I know that there are a lot of groups that are against this bill. Some groups, it's unexplainable how they could be against this bill when they purport to represent the people that this bill is partly intended to help and to protect. We've heard a lot this morning so far about the cost that this bill may have. I don't think cost should be an issue when we're talking about the lives of our children. We are sent here to protect the vulnerable and those who are unable to protect themselves, and I don't think there's any better example of that than the kids that are sitting across our state in their public and private classrooms this morning, and the teachers. God forbid there were an active shooter, and I understand that there's some schools that do have the luxury of having PROs and other resources within their school, but that's not available across the board, and that's not a fail-proof tactic. There are ways around that. This just provides an additional layer that would make anyone that wants to come into our schools and harm our beautiful children, make them think twice about doing that, because the classroom they go into, there could be an armed teacher or an armed personnel member that would confront them and stop their reign of terror. I don't believe, from talking to the sponsors and looking at this bill and speaking with those within this body that are here proposing and asking us to pass this, that anybody's in a hurry to pass this bill in order to say who is the protector. We're in a hurry to pass this bill because we're against dead children. And we're about protecting the most vulnerable that we're sent here to protect. So while I appreciate the comments from the gentleman from the 25th, I find it rich that we're being lectured now from the other side of the aisle after they voted to allow doctors to euthanize people and allowed obscenity into our classrooms and our libraries. Now they have the audacity to lecture us on morals. Please pass this bill.
Ladies and gentlemen, the chair has allowed quite a lot of latitude in debate on this bill thus far, but please let's confine our discussion on this bill to the merits of the bill. Gentleman from the 5th, Doug Fluharty, is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the sponsor yield a few questions?
Sure.
I just want to get a couple follow-ups from the gentlelady from the 56th. Is there any parental notification in this legislation? For instance, is there notification that a district has certified someone to carry in the classroom?
Yes, there is.
To the parents?
They were, let me find it here.
Because I could not find parental notification in the bill. We can move on if
There is a in here for them to host a public hearing type thing. I just can't find the words for it right now.
Okay, well, that's a little different. So, but there's nothing in the bill, you'd agree with me, based upon your search there, that there's no notification that goes out to parents that...
No, nothing like that.
Okay,
Direct
so
notification? No, the bill doesn't address that.
So how, I mean, we now have parents who are able to view books and the curriculum and things of that nature, but there's no mechanism in this bill that allows parents to, have input on whether they want the district to have SPOs, teachers as SPOs?
Well, I don't think there's anything in my bill about books, but no,
Okay, so there's no, other than potentially a public hearing, that's what you're saying?
I'd have to find it Yeah, I
Okay.
can take the time and look for it, exact
And
words.
I believe you said there's no student notification. In other words, students aren't going to know if any teachers have guns on them?
Well, if this bill passes, it's inherent that the entire state would know.
Well, I'm saying
That the possibility is there.
Well, there's still a possibility that there's still a possibility under this legislation that nobody gets designated if nobody qualifies.
Absolutely.
Okay, so once somebody qualifies and gets designated, is there notification that goes to the students of the school that somebody has been so designated, even if they don't say their name?
Bill doesn't specifically address that, no.
Okay, that's what I thought. Thank you for yielding. Very briefly, Mr. Speaker, to the bill.
Yes, gentleman's recognized.
You know, we've gone from campus carry to kindergarten carry, but we don't have capital carry. A little ironic, isn't it? No capital carry, but campus carry and kindergarten carry. And in both those situations, especially this one, not a single expert came in and said, we need this legislation. Not a single principal came in and said, I want this for my schools. Nobody from a school district came in and said, we need this legislation. We sat through committee process, none of that came up. No parental notification. No student notification. I, as a student, would like to know. Could you imagine having me in class? Imagine that. I get under your skin here now. Imagine me back in the day. I see your heads shaking up and down. Yeah, I'd like to know if a teacher was armed. I would like to know that. But we don't care enough to think about the students and their views on it. We didn't have any testimony from students saying they want this. We don't care about their views. So all the experts have been ignored because we play experts here in Charleston on all kinds of legislation. This is just another one. But it's not lost on me that just last week we passed a bill saying we didn't trust teachers to use appropriate books in the classroom, as you mentioned. We didn't trust them to use appropriate books in the classroom just last week. And this week, we think they're all kindergarten cop. It's amazing. I'm a no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman from the 86th, Delegate Ward is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll try to be brief. So in 1993, I started my career as a deputy sheriff. We had 3 deputies and 3 troopers that policed 583 square miles. So on a good day, on a good shift, you know, there might have been 2 cops to police 583 square miles. And I remember talking to the citizens around that would sometimes complain about, well, you know, you guys are so far away and it seems like it takes forever. I always told them, and kind of laughing, that when seconds matter, we'll be there in minutes. So fast forward to 2006, I was a new father. The sheriff at that time approached me and said, we'd like to start a school resource officer program. We had very limited resources, so unlike today's PROs or SROs, I was responsible for the entire county. I had 6 schools that I had to patrol. The worry, as I was trying to learn and study up on the horrible shootings that had happened prior to 2006, there were red flags that were missed. You know, there were a lot of things that should have been caught, so I spent the majority of my time trying to educate school faculty and staff of what to look for. But I was worried because if I was on the other side of the mountain at East Hardy High School, I knew that the folks at Moorfield Elementary School, by the time that I got there to respond to something, it would have been well past any reasonable time to help somebody. Throughout that time, I ran into countless teachers and staff and custodians, just like my friend from the 14th, who recognizes that, you know, they have, you know, the most intimate control and the most responsibilities. You know, we hold our teachers in such high esteem, which brings me to, and this is not, I'm not much of a public speaker, so 2016, fast forward, I'm the elected sheriff and nearing the end of my first term, and folks were talking about in some circles, oh, those crazies down at the legislature are considering constitutional carry. It's going to be the Wild West. And throughout my prior years in law enforcement, you know, most folks, you know, I came to the understanding that, you know, the bad guys already carry guns. You know, the only thing that constitutional carry helped with was that, you know, more good folks were not deemed as criminals to defend themselves, their families, and their communities. So in some circles, they were just saying that, you know, it's going to be the end of the world. That didn't happen. For the constitutional carry that's passed in 2016, the only exclusion was that you weren't a convicted felon, that you weren't found mentally incompetent, you know, that you were a citizen of any character. Blue collar, white collar, Democrat, Republican, it was just, you know, folks had the constitutional right to carry. So now we're talking about a bill that doesn't address a public at large with all sorts of characters, but we're talking about teachers and other staff that we hire and trust to protect our kids. They're in a different class. You know, this is not I was for constitutional carry. The scary stories that we were warned about that, oh, if this passes, bad things will come, it didn't happen. This bill is no different. And we're actually looking to allow teachers and people of such high character and that we hold in such high esteem to be the first ones there, because just as I started at the beginning, when seconds count, we'll be there in minutes. It's a good bill, pass it.
Gentleman from the 13th, Doug Hackert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We trust the teachers to teach our kids. We trust the teachers to take care of our kids. There's going to be a lot of argument. There's going to be a lot of name calling. There's going to be a lot of this and that. Bottom line is they have to have a course. They have to know what they're doing, when to do it, when not to do it. A teacher that is not responsible and doesn't pass a class won't be doing it. The teacher has to want to do it. We're having a lot of talk and a lot of argument just so everybody can get upset and get mad and raise their voice and carry on. Bottom line is, we've been very fortunate in the state of West Virginia that we haven't had a massacre of children. And I pray we don't. And I pray the people that vote against this can live with themselves if we ever do, and this don't pass. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Lady from the 81st, Doug Hamilton's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. What we've listened to today is on the issue of protection of our students, protection of youth. My pause with this bill is the fact that our kids are already not protected. We spend more time and energy on a perceived enemy than we have dealing with some of the issues that have been present in school. I find it strange that we want to push legislation that is not based on any data in West Virginia. We heard from different organizations in the Education Committee on what teachers want, what teachers are bothered by. I asked specifically, did teachers want to carry guns in school? And that question was never asked. We have never asked the teachers what they want. There was a study done by CNN in November of 23 that did a survey of teachers, and 54% did not feel that having guns in the classroom made them feel safer, nor did it empower them in the event of a shooting. They wanted more security measures done to their schools, which we have put a lot of legislation and money into making our schools safe. I think it's I think it would be, we would have more wisdom in our pathway if we actually consulted the people. And I know that we say it's permissive, but if we actually asked them. Now, I will say that I would feel safe if I had my friend here, I don't know what district he's from. If he had a gun, I would feel safe with him not having a gun. But I cannot say that for all teachers. I cannot say that. And I feel that if we can put more emphasis in destroying the pipeline to prison the way we are with putting guns in teachers' hands, we will have a better climate in school. And while, yes, I want our children to be alive, I also don't want to see our black and brown children, our children suffering from poverty, and our children suffering from homelessness in jail because of the lack of protection that they have not gotten while in our schools. Data shows some of the weaknesses, and while we're trying to protect our kids from an enemy on the outside, what about some of the systems and structures that are proven to be an enemy on the inside? I think we need to take a long look at what we're trying to do. And I also believe that this sets a precedent that all public spaces that are vulnerable to a mass shooting, we had at my hospital someone to say that we were vulnerable to an active shooter. So does that mean that as employees we should be able to carry in the event that there is a mass shooting? I think that, and oftentimes a lot of us in here, and this isn't about carrying guns, because we are for that. And a lot of times when we don't agree, or if we're not for guns, then that automatically puts us on the other side. It's not. I believe in protection, but I believe that we should protect on all fronts, not just with guns, that we should protect our kids in all ways. And I also ask the question that teachers have a hard time now having control over their classrooms. So you're telling me that one training is going to give them the wherewithal to take down an active shooter who more than likely has an assault weapon. I just don't see that happening. And I pray that we won't have to prove this, but I think that we need to put a lot more energy, effort, and money into some of the systems in school to protect our children in more ways than with a gun. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes the gentleman from the 7th, Delegate Sheedy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to know who all in this room has even read the bill. All I have heard is gun, gun, gun. What's going to happen when I pull out a taser? Non-deadly force, non-lethal force. It's in the bill. Please read the bill.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 80th, Delegate Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, last week, before we had a difficult debate on this floor, our Speaker of the House reminded us to never question someone's intent when speaking to a bill. And that's a good reminder for floor decorum, but I think that's also a good reminder when we deal with any issue, whether it be in this chamber or in life outside of this building. And I don't question the intent of any member in this body, regardless of what color button they intend to press. My friend from Putnam, in closing on his amendment, showed genuine, true emotion that I can appreciate. And if you are in support of this bill, I know that it comes from a place of wanting to protect children. Where we lose each other, though, is on how these things would actually go down in a situation. My dear friend from the 14th, I would trust my son in your classroom. I trust you. I would trust my friend from Greenbrier County in his classroom, but it's already been touched on. There are so many people who I haven't had the pleasure of meeting who could carry a gun in our schools, who might elect to do so. And I don't know that I would trust them with my son in their classroom with a firearm. I know nothing of battle. I know nothing of war or armed conflict, nothing past the occasional film, I guess. But I want to talk about the fog of war, which is the uncertainty and situational awareness experienced by participants in military operations. The term seeks to capture the uncertainty regarding one's own capability, adversary capability, and adversary intent during an engagement. When we think about that, and you think about perhaps a firearms enthusiast, as my friend from Kanawha mentioned, we all probably have some familiarity with firearms. This isn't merely going to the range and shooting some targets. This requires tactical awareness, understanding a threat, perceiving the threat correctly so as to not incur fire upon innocent victims. And so with that, we've done a lot of work to put officers in our schools. They're trained, I trust them. They've had adequate training to my estimation. And I fear, again, I know that if you're voting for this bill, you want to protect children. Where we disagree is if that is the right way to go. And I would implore you to consider that it might not be someone with the best aim that would be in our schools. It might not be someone who's had the best of tactical training who would be charged, and this could in fact lead to potential deaths or more deaths in a school than would have otherwise happened. I'll be voting no. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 17th District, Delegate Pinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Make no mistake about it, what we're doing is not working. This bill is not about separation. It's not about hate. It's about a safe haven. When kids go to school, they deserve to be safe. It's hard for them to focus on math when they have to worry about an active shooter. We want their test scores up. They want to be safe. I can remember being a child growing up in the schools in Florida before I was adopted. I can remember having hurricane drills. They'd march us out into the hallway with a school book in our hand, and they'd have us lay with our heads between our knees with a school book over our head in preparation for a hurricane. I was maybe 8 or 9 or 10 years old. And I remember thinking, this is foolish. What's a school book going to do for a hurricane? How's this going to save my life? I wanted to be safe. This bill is not a political issue. It's about protection. And any person, be it on this side of the aisle or that walks out of here and makes this a political issue, shame on you. That's not what this bill's for. I completely, vividly remember Columbine, 1999. I was 14 years old. I remember watching Columbine. I grew up in a broken home. We didn't watch the news. But that day, everybody watched the news. I remember Columbine happening and feeling the sense of violation, the sense of robbery, that our schools have now become a target. You rewind 30 years ago, you would have been called crazy if you would have suggested that metal detectors belong in our schools. You rewind 30 years ago, you'd been called crazy if you would have said every school needs an armed police officer. Maybe we should consider arming teachers. You'd have been viewed as nuts just 30 years ago. So why are we putting metal detectors in schools? Why are we striving to put a police officer in every single school? Because we realize they are targets and what we are doing is not working. Evidence of that is the 1,375 school shootings that have taken place since Columbine. Almost 1,400 school shootings since 1999. 515 children have died. Almost 1,200 students have been injured. What we are doing is not working, and no one in this body, this side or that, is suggesting that this cures it all. But this is one more step. How did we get here? How did we get to where West Virginia is considering whether we should arm teachers? Maybe it's the fact that we looked at 32 other states around our nation who have already taken this step of protection for their children. Maybe we realized we ought to do the same. No one's suggesting this bill fixes everything, but what we are suggesting is our children are worth it. Please vote green and pass the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 76th District, Delegate Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So last week I talked to a group of kids, 8th graders from home, down here experiencing the Capitol, and brought up this bill, just asked them what did they think about it. And immediately they started listing off teachers they didn't think should have a gun in their school, and they laughed about it, right? They laughed about it. I wonder sometimes if they're laughing because nervously, you know, the fact is this bill is moving. Probably is going to happen. But I've heard a number of things from parents and students and teachers back home, apprehensions. And you know what? As a lawyer, I don't know, that's sometimes we overthink things, and the skeptic in me tends to come out. I know that's probably pretty annoying to a lot of people here. But I think about what maybe we're not thinking about, what could go wrong. I like the bill that we did earlier this year, committee substitute for House Bill 4851. I have concerns that in this bill, we're not providing the type of training and vetting that that bill did. I mean, if you go back and look at it, school security officers, people who were former law enforcement officers would be able to come into the school and carry. They'd have to continue their certification. They'd have to have a background check. There'd have to be a written certification from the Division of Protective Services that they were fit to be able to do this. And they'd have to continue in good standing. In this bill, we asked two things. One is to get a concealed carry permit, which I've told many, I promise one of these days I'm going to do it, but I've heard it only takes about 2 hours. 3 hours maybe on a Saturday afternoon. And the other thing is 24 hours of training. It doesn't say you have to be great. It doesn't say you have to be a marksman. You just have to take the training, 24 hours. That's what we're asking, versus hundreds and hundreds of hours and sometimes years of experience for those individuals who would come into our schools, and that's the job they would do, protect. Not teach, not get distracted with other things. Their job would be to protect, and I think this really goes pretty far. And there is no background check that I understand here. I think there is a potential appeals method that really might provide a right for anybody who would want to, especially now that the bill is not just permissive, but it's mandatory. I have the right to carry a gun in schools. I think that language is a little bit cloudy. And that is not, and so the guardrails are what worry me, and that's not to say, again, I look at my good friend from Mercer, I look at my friend from Wood, you know, my friend from the 44th who we talked about earlier. Good people, and there's so many good people that I know are coming at this from the right place in their heart, all right? And so when I think about this, and I know this is the scenario that we're all thinking about, where a person comes into a school and they go and they get beyond the metal detectors. My friend from the 17th spoke of. We've done so much to make our schools fortresses. So if they get through the metal detectors, then if there is a school safety officer, they get past that person. They move beyond. They get to the classroom. They open the door. And they pull out a gun. But maybe in the front row, Johnny says, Mr. Johnson, what are you doing? I think about that scenario. The fact that it could be somebody, could be a teacher. And that's not to say, and that's not to put any disrespect, but that's just taking all of those things that we have put in place to try to protect somebody, and somebody can get beyond that and get into a school because we didn't do the vetting, because we didn't provide the training. That is a scenario, and I'm a skeptic, and I've heard it said earlier about explaining the voter, how can you live with yourself, and I would not turn that around. Everybody in here hopes that nothing like this ever happens in the state of West Virginia. But these are valid questions. And for that reason, I'm voting no.
The gentleman from the 55th District, Delegate Akers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No emotion, just facts. In the year 2013, one state allowed teacher carry. In the year 2018, that number had increased to 15 states. In the year 2024, there are now 33 states. We've waited patiently and watched state after state pass this in increasing numbers. We're now actually behind the curve and in the minority. We're often blamed for being last in many categories. We shouldn't be last in this one. I urge passage. Thank you.
Chair recognizes the gentleman from the 74th District, Delegate DeVault.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Whenever we talk about stopping a shooter, a potential shooter, when we have layers of protection for our children, that's a deterrent in itself. Now, how many teachers, service personnel will go to these classes? I don't know. I don't want to know. The reason I don't want to know is neither does a prospective shooter. He doesn't know. Now, we're talking about we've got a layer hardening the doors. We call them sally ports, double entries, locks, cameras. But whenever it fails, now we have what we call an SPO. And so we're banking on one person with a gun to stop a suspected shooter. Well, if you all look back at Parkland, remember the school in Florida? They had an SRO with a gun. When it went down, he was outside telling the deputies, don't go in there, somebody's in there with a gun. So if we'd have had teachers, service personnel, that's that extra layer of protection. How will they perform? I don't know. Neither does a prospective shooter. I'm a yes vote on this, and I recommend everybody be a yes vote. Thank you, sir.
Chair recognizes the gentlelady from the 19th District, Delegate Krause.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will go ahead and bring up something that has not been brought up yet, but across this state, this is already being done on maybe just a little bit smaller of a scale, but I can tell you without a doubt, homeschoolers do this on a daily basis. I have done it with small groups, and I have done it with groups up to 200, and I have also done it with groups that included public school students there. There has been no accidents, nothing's happened, and I know that those students are protected from whatever danger comes away or comes around. I'm not the only one there carrying, there are other parents carrying. So this is already happening across the state, and there's no problems with it. We need to protect our children in the schools. For those that are afraid that kids are going to get to the guns, I can promise you this also. I give presentations to women on how to conceal carry. I can conceal carry up to 13 on my person. Children can't get to it. And if I can do 13 at one time, teachers can easily do one. Now, I do agree with my friend from across the aisle in the 25th on one thing. We do need to teach gun safety to our children, and I would be more than happy to co-sponsor an Eddie Eagle bill with him so we can get the NRA into our school system to teach our children gun safety. And to get this concealed carry permit, teachers must take the concealed carry classes. And as parents and teachers, we all know that we encourage our own kids to go above and beyond learning requirements. So what is to stop them from going above and beyond to learn even more? So thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge passage.
Gentleman to 57th, Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just had some, would the sponsor yield for a couple questions?
Sure.
Thank you, sir. What is the maximum number of SPOs in a school? Is there a max?
There is no max.
So every teacher could be armed?
Every teacher could be trained. It doesn't necessarily mean that they are going to be armed.
Okay, fair point. Is there like a prohibition on certain teachers who maybe teach certain classes that wouldn't be allowed to be SPOs?
Not addressed in the bill.
Okay. And what would happen if in a situation, like let's say a teacher, got removed or got fired and they were a SPO, would they have to surrender that weapon, or how would that work?
The weapon's a personal weapon.
Okay. But if they're in school,
if they're fired, and if they're fired, they're obviously not they're not going to be a SPO anymore.
well, I'm just saying if they were fired, like if they were disciplined or suspended or fired like during school hours, how would that sort of play out? If the principal's firing you.
You're asking me for a hypothetical there. I can't answer that.
Okay. All right, no other questions. That's it, sir. Thank you.
Gentleman to 30th, Delegate Adkins.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have PRO in Lincoln County High School, and I'm sure she's a new parent herself, new mother, and she would absolutely love to have help, a backup in the school by teachers, and I'm sure Mike Conacher would really like to be in on this conversation. Thank you. Vote for the bill.
Gentleman to 14th, Delegate Fogan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I apologize to all of you. I appreciate and love all of you in here. That may be one way, but I do. And everyone makes a valid argument over here. Evil is a problem. Hate is a problem. I would like to be able to combat hate with love, but unfortunately, it would take a firearm if someone else has one. We all have different backgrounds. We all have different experiences, different beliefs. My room up at Parkersburg South High School used to overlook the football field, overlook the Dairy Queen, the pizza place, and it overlooked the community bank of Parkersburg. And every day, I would watch trucks pull up to the bank, and I would watch trucks leave the bank. And I pointed out to my kids one day, I said, "You see that truck over there?" They're like, "Yeah." "Oh, that's a money truck," they all said. I said, "Yeah, it is, a money truck." I said, "Take a look at those people driving the money truck. Tell me what you see." They didn't see anything. I said, "Look a little closer. You see that gun they have?" "Yeah." And I pointed out to them that some folks felt it was very important to protect money with a firearm, but they didn't feel it was so important to protect a child with a firearm. I could talk about this all day. I could talk about the training. I could talk about the fellows in Homeland Security, if you recall last year, that said only people with Homeland Security training would be issued to carry a gun. And he said his training was very thorough. How about instead of saying we're going to give teachers a gun to have in their classroom, we say we're going to give teachers a means of protecting our children, my children, your children, everyone's children. There's been a lot of near misses at my school. No one talks about them. They don't go in the newspaper. We take a gun off of a kid in the cafeteria. No one talks about it. We take a gun off of a kid out in the back parking lot. No one talks about it. It's like an iceberg. We see a little tip of it, and there's probably a lot more that goes unnoticed. I can't think of anyone who would want to shoot a child in a school. But there are people who want to. I can't think of anything that would be worse doing than shooting a child in school. But if it would protect the other children there, I would do it. One of my best friends, probably my best friend, is the resource officer at my school. He would charge as fast as he could get there if there was a shooting anywhere in the school, my room included. But as fast as he is, as athletic as he is, it wouldn't be soon enough. That's all I have to say. Thank you all.
Gentleman, the 94th Delegate Kumps, recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Great googly moogly, I did not stand to call for the previous question. However, I would ask if the sponsor would yield for a few questions.
Sure.
Do you believe this legislation in any way conflicts with the overriding law of our land, the United States Constitution?
No.
Do you believe that this legislation in any way conflicts with the right of the people to keep and bear arms?
No.
Do you think school employees should have the right to keep and bear arms?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there further debate on the bill? If not, shall I recognize the gentleman from the 51st or gentleman from 39th to close debate on the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Friends, I know this is a heated topic, and I appreciate all the discussion. There's good comments on both sides, and I do agree with my friend from the 25th. We do need to look at the mental and put more resources out there for helping in that area. I had a couple concerns. I heard at 3 different occasions, I heard the comments that alluded to, I can't trust a teacher with a gun. I work with some of these people. I can't trust some of these people with a gun. That scares the living out of me. But you expect me to trust my children with those teachers, but you don't trust those teachers with a gun. That just doesn't pass the common sense test in my mind. Heard that word mentioned a bunch. If it happens. No, it ain't if, it's when. And we need to realize when and prepare for that. Because it will happen someday. It's crucial that we emphasize that this bill does not advocate for arming every teacher. It proposes a carefully planned and voluntary program where willing educators undergo practical training in firearm usage and crisis management. This ensures that only those who are well prepared and capable would carry a concealed weapon. Furthermore, and it was brought up, the mere possibility of having a trained and armed staff member or teacher can serve as a deterrent. Potential perpetrators may reconsider targeting a school if they know there is a possibility that there might be somebody armed in there. Passing this bill signifies a commitment to prioritizing the safety of our students and educators. It aims to create an environment where learning can flourish without constant fear of violence. Allowing teachers and staff who voluntarily undergo training to carry concealed weapons is one more facet of a comprehensive strategy to protect our children. It was mentioned it's not the single answer, it's one more tool. A yes vote on this bill is a clear statement that we prioritize the lives of our school children in West Virginia. I urge a yes vote. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Debate on the bill has been closed. The question now before the House is shall the bill pass. Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 89 ayes, 11 nays, and 0 members absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 4299, permit teachers in K-12 schools be authorized to carry concealed firearms as a designated school protection officer.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. For the purpose of the gentleman, the 20th, seek recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I understand it's a little bit unconventional, but this bill's become very important with me with the adding of the amendment. So I'd ask, or I would move for the suspension of House Rule 94 so that I may be added as the 12th sponsor on the bill.
Gentleman, the 20th, ask unanimous consent that the rule be suspended, that he be allowed to be added as a co-sponsor of the bill. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Gentleman's name will be so added as a co-sponsor. Clerk will please report the action of the House and the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5065 regarding continuing education requirements and compensation of guardians ad litem.
Are there objections to having the bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman, the 42nd, Douglas Steele, to explain the bill.
Mr. Speaker, this bill would amend provisions of the West Virginia Code relating to guardians ad litem and attorneys appointed to serve as legal counsel to a minor. The bill increases the rate of compensation for public defender panel attorneys serving as guardian ad litems for a minor child in a child abuse and neglect proceeding from $60 an hour out of court and to $105 an hour out of court, and $80 an hour to $125 an hour in court. Meetings are added to what constitutes in-court work, which is a slight change because this would indicate that a multidisciplinary team meeting would now be compensated at an in-court rate rather than an out-of-court rate. The bill also requires an order in an infant summary proceeding for which a GAL is appointed to represent a minor, include reimbursement to the GAL for actual and necessary expenses and compensation for legal services at the rate of $200 per hour. The bill requires that a guardian ad litem appointed to represent a minor in a minor settlement proceeding have received and completed all of the required continuing education as is currently required of those appointed for child abuse and neglect proceedings. Also, following yesterday's amendment phase, which is not on my thing here, but nonetheless, following yesterday's amendment, there will also be some data reporting requirements that will be compiled by Public Defender Services and the Supreme Court. That is the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
I'm sorry? It is. Question before the House now is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman, 64th, Douglas Burkhammer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appreciate the work of the sponsor here on this bill. And when we look at the complexity of the foster care crisis across the state, I told some of you guys I kind of dove headlong into that over the past year. And I looked for the easy solution. I thought that we could just change something and it would just be this automatic fix and the crisis would go away. But what I soon realized throughout that complexity is that you can have the best structure, you can have the best law, you can have the best ideas, but if you don't have the people, the necessary people to implement those things, those are just words on a page. And so when we look at the complexity of these cases and going through the legal process, I said it yesterday, I'm going to reiterate it again today, that these guardians ad litems are the most essential people, I believe, in the state today. Because their sole duty is to represent the best interests of the child that is now in the custody of the state. And currently, there are only 159, with over 6,000 kids in foster care. Some of these guardians ad litems are carrying over 300 cases. And we're expecting them to represent the best interest of the child when in those cases they're supposed to see over 10 children a day.
That just seems impossible to me. So when we look at investments and we look at fixing problems, we look at attracting people, this investment is crucial. This investment, I believe, will change the lives of kids in our foster care system. So again, I appreciate the work that the sponsor has done on it. I appreciate the work of some of the other attorneys that have served as guardians, that have took my calls this year, that have been a crucial part in us trying to fix this crisis. I urge passage.
Is there further debate on the bill? Gentleman to 78, Douglas Shirley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll be real quick. I appreciate all the work that's gone into something like this. As a former Child Protective Services worker, I understand the problems that we have. I've seen a lot of the issues, especially when it comes to the burden that guardian ad litems carry. Think long and hard about this. Take the time to really look into this issue, because it might not be as glamorous as some of the things that we do in this chamber, but this year, this might be the most important bill that we pass. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman to 44, Douglas Kirby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As someone who's served as a guardian ad litem in this state for the past 13 years of my career, I can tell you that this bill is not only overdue, but it is absolutely necessary if we want to do anything to try to help our foster care system. I think it was alluded to earlier from the previous speaker that we are on the front lines. The guardian ad litems are probably the most pivotal part of the court system. They're often overlooked. And so I want to thank the sponsor and all those who worked hard on this bill, because I do think that the passage of this bill will have an immediate positive impact on our foster care system, and I think we all know how badly it needs a positive impact at this point. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there further debate on the bill? Does the gentleman wish to close debate on the bill? Gentleman to 42nd is recognized.
I want to thank everybody for their support on this bill. I imagine that this is going to be somewhat unanimous, but I just feel the need to echo what some of the other folks have said in here. You know, we've worked on this bill for quite some time to try to figure out, I think all of us in here recognize that our foster care system, that crisis is the #1 crisis facing our state today. The very fact that our next generation is in such jeopardy right now that greater than 1% of the children in this state are in foster care represents a real crisis. And I know that throwing money at a problem is not always the way to go about it. But when I look at the hard work that our guardian ad litems are doing, as it is now 159, I'm hopeful that this bill will encourage the right attorneys, the attorneys that do have a heart for kids, the attorneys that do have a heart for this kind of work, that it will encourage them to redouble their efforts and refocus their efforts and possibly focus their practice entirely on doing this. It is my hope that we triple the number of guardian ad litems overnight, that by the time this goes into effect with the finances amendment for the coming fiscal year in July, that we'll have 3 times the number of GALs in this state. I think this will attract quality attorneys that are trying to do quality work for good people. And I hope that all of you will support this, and thank all of you for your input and the work through the committee process in making this happen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman to 76, Garcia, seek recognition?
Rule 49.
Yes. So at this time, the chair would invite all members who seek a ruling by the chair pursuant to House Rule 49 to please register your request with the clerk by pressing your button. Okay, thank you. Clerk will please note those members who have sought a ruling by the chair under House Rule 49. It is a ruling of the chair that each of you do belong to a class of greater than 5 individuals and therefore are eligible to vote on this question. At this time, a question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 99 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 member absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5065 regarding continuing education requirements and compensation of guardians ad litem.
Are there title amendments?
The Committee on Finance moves to amend the title.
The question now is on the adoption of the title amendment. Those in favor of adoption of the title amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares the title amendment adopted. The title as amended by the House will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5347 relating to establishing a program for emergency medical services personnel to become certified paramedics.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Lady from the 73rd to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill establishes a program for emergency medical service personnel who, after 3 years of serving as emergency medical service personnel or as an EMT, are eligible for state assistance through a fund that is already established in the code to become a certified paramedic, and only if the funds are available. The bill also makes a few technical changes to resolve code conflicts from another bill, House Bill 4978, which passed earlier this session. I urge adoption.
The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on that question. There are 100 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 absent. Majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5347 relating to establishing a program for emergency medical services personnel to become certified paramedics.
Are the title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. Gentleman from 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill take effect July 1st, 2024.
The question now is on the gentleman's motion that the bill take effect July 1st, 2024. Those in favor of the motion will please vote aye. Those opposed will please vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result. On this question, there are 100 ayes, 0 nays, and 0 absent. 2/3 of members voting in the affirmative. The chair declares the bill effective July 1st, 2024. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5361 relating to allowing influenza immunizations to be offered to hospital patients.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? No objections are heard. Gentleman 26, I got Rohrbach to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This committee substitute moves the requirement to the appropriate article of code, and it requires that a hospital ask an individual 50 years or older if they would like a flu shot upon discharge. This is between the October 1st and March 1st dates. It moves the age limit, which is currently in code, from 65 to 50 based upon new recommendations for flu shots. Under no circumstances do people have to take the vaccine. All this bill does is changes the age from 65 to 50. That's summary of the bill, Mr. Speaker, and I urge passage.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman at 20th, Delegate Foster is recognized.
Thank you. Does the gentleman yield for a question?
Gladly.
So why the flu shot suggestion over the age of 50?
Because those are the new recommendations from the CDC for everybody.
Is that because they're considered old after 50?
The gentleman can read that into however he likes what the definition of old is.
All right. Thank you. Speak to the bill.
Yes, the gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to be voting against this bill because my neighbor here from the 45th is 53, and I do not think he's old, so I'll be voting against the bill.
Gentleman of 42nd, Douglas Steele is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would be against this for a multitude of different reasons, but I just really don't see, I mean, how many times can we come back in here and toe the line for a pharmaceutical industry that's got strapped with trillions of dollars in his pocket, and we're putting into code, you know, trying to sell a product to somebody as they're walking out of the hospital. You know, that makes absolutely no sense to me. You know, when you leave the courthouse, do they hand you a card and say, hey, call this lawyer and talk to him about your will? Maybe we'll run that next. Maybe we'll run that next. Maybe as we're walking out of the mall, you know, somebody hands you a discount card. We can make a law that somebody hands you a discount card to go back in and get your nails done. you know, at the nail salon, at the mall, or something like that. Maybe we can help that industry out. But what we sit in here and do, is sit here and toe the line for our pharmaceutical industry that is doing nothing more than using this state as a petri dish. And we're sucking up to them with stuff like this nonsense. Medical care that you may or may not need, medical care that may or may not have been verified and tested, and medical care for which, if you were injured, you can't even sue them. But we're going to put in law that we're going to recommend that every single person over the age of 50 now, why don't we just recommend it to everybody? This is nothing more than nanny state bowing down to capitalistic medical efforts from the pharmaceutical industry. And I encourage you to vote it down.
Is there further debate on the bill? Is there further debate on the bill? Does the gentleman from the 26th wish to close debate on the bill? If not, the question is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 60 ayes, 39 nays, 1 member absent, a majority in favor of the bill. The bill should close the bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5361 relating to allowing influenza immunizations to be offered to hospital patients.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action to the House and the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5635 relating to allowing patients to direct prescribers to list the illness or condition for which a prescription is being issued on the label of the prescription.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having the bill read? No objections are heard. Lady from the 73rd to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The purpose of this bill is to require prescribers to ask their patients or authorized guardians if they want the use of the medication listed on the directions of the prescription label for a new prescription. I urge passage.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman, 32nd, Douglas Holstein.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this is one of the best bills that I've seen in my 4 sessions here. I want to give you all a little bit of a scenario here. My grandpa, who I help take care of when I can, he's 84, almost 85 years old. Didn't graduate high school, you know, went straight into coal mines as soon as he was able to, 15, 16, 17 years old, somewhere around there. Worked his whole life to support his family, and now we get to pay him back and support him. And it's an honor and a privilege to do that every day, even in the bad cases and the bad times. He takes nearly 20 different medications and has no idea what the name brand or the scientific name is for any of that medication. He has no idea, and he relies on us to help him with that. And we got a picture here I wanted to show you all. This is a picture of his medicine right now. Each bottle of medicine that he has is labeled by what it does, that we've had to write on with a with a marker. So I think this is very important, and I'm excited to see this, and I thank the sponsor for introducing such an important piece of legislation. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Is there other debate on the bill? If not, those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. There are 97 ayes, 2 nays, and 1 member absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative, the chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5635 relating to allowing patients to direct prescribers to list the illness or condition for which a prescription is being issued on the label of the prescription.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Next bill on third reading.
House Bill 5691 relating to a biennial capitation rate review to be conducted by the Bureau of Medical Services.
Are there objections to having this bill explained in lieu of having it read? If not, gentleman from the 92nd, Douglas Height to explain the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill concerns the capitation rate review conducted
by BMS last year. The bill continues the rate study of the Medicaid waiver programs, but changes the requirement that the study be done from yearly to every 2 years. I urge passage.
You've heard the bill explained. The question now before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there debate on the bill? Gentleman from the 54th Delegate Pushkin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, I plan on voting for the bill, as I think everybody should vote for the bill. I just wanted to briefly explain that we had a study. There was a presentation from BMS. The findings was that we needed to give a significant rate increase for these direct workers for these waiver programs. As far as I know, it wasn't in the governor's budget. I think it should be. I think a lot of you agree that it should be in there. While I support having more studies, if we don't act on the findings and the recommendations of these studies, you can have as many commissions and blue ribbon panels and studies as you want. They're not worth the paper the bill's printed on if we don't enact them and actually place worth on it and give a significant rate increase to these folks that are working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, people in the AD waiver program. So I would just say I hope we can pass the bill, but I hope we're able to actually listen to the result of the study and add that to the budget. Thank you.
Gentleman from the 23rd Delegate Worrell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For once, I agree with my friend from the 54th. And just to give a quick example on the age and disabled waiver program for Medicaid, the rate study included it should be a $10 million increase in the state budget. DHHR did a study on this, and they found at-risk individuals who were on the age and disabled program that if they were not to be kept at home and went to a nursing home, it would cost the state $199 million to have them in a nursing home. So when you compare that to $10 million, right, to keep people at home, which is where people want to be, it should be a no-brainer that we should be including this in our budget this year. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Question still before the House is, shall the bill pass? Is there further debate on the bill? Does the gentleman wish to close debate on the bill? If not, the question before the House is, shall the bill pass? Those in favor of passage of the bill will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. The clerk will prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk will close the machine and ascertain the result on this question. We have 99 ayes, 0 nays, and 1 member absent. A majority of members having voted in the affirmative. The chair declares that bill passed. The clerk will please report the title.
House Bill 5691, relating to a biennial capitation rate review to be conducted by the Bureau of Medical Services.
Are there title amendments? If not, the title as read by the clerk will be and remain the title of the bill. The clerk will please communicate the action of the House to the Senate. Are there further bills on third reading? If not, bills on second reading.
Senate Bill 461.
Gentleman 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action 1 day.
Are there objections to postponing action 1 day on the bill? No objections are heard. Action will be postponed 1 day on the bill. Next bill on second reading.
Senate Bill 602, Cardiac Emergency Response Plan Act.
Are there amendments?
Delegate Ellington moves to amend the bill.
Are there objections to allowing the sponsor to explain the amendment in lieu of having the amendment read? No objections are heard. Gentleman to 38th, Delegate Ellington, to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This strike and insert amendment reflects the work that was done in House committees on Health and Human Resources and Education when both committees considered House Bill 5021, which was similar to the Senate bill. The amendment replaces language that was contained in Senate Bill 602 with more comprehensive language that was contained in the committee substitute on House Bill 5021. So essentially, we feel it's a better bill. We just wanted to insert that in and remove that. I can go over any changes if people would like. I urge adoption.
The question now is on the amendment just explained by the sponsor. Is there debate on the amendment? Is there debate on the amendment? If not, those in favor of adoption of the amendment will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. Chair declares that amendment adopted. Are there other amendments to the bill? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4008 to amend the time required for providing notice of an entry onto land for visiting a grave from 10 days to 3.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4191 relating to requirements imposed on social media companies to prevent corruption and provide transparency of election-related content made available on social media websites.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Mr. Speaker. Mr.
Bill
Speaker,
96.
yes, I want to ask unanimous consent that we postpone action one day.
On House Bill 4191.
That's correct.
Okay, are there any objections to postponing action one day on committee substitute for House Bill 4191? Okay, no objections are heard. Clerk will please record committee substitute for House Bill 4191 on second reading tomorrow. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4706, creating the Utility Pole Rights-of-Way and Easement Mapping Initiative.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 4880, relating to personal income tax, Social Security exemption.
Are there amendments? Nope, bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5020, relating to deferred adjudication and pretrial diversions for first offense DUI cases.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5024, relating to exempting non-grantor trusts administered in this state from the personal income tax.
Are there amendments? If not, Gentleman 66, Douglas Nestor.
Point of inquiry, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Gentleman, state your
on
question.
House Bill 5039, you inquired as to whether there were amendments. I believe there is a amendment on that bill.
No, we haven't reached that bill yet, Doug.
All right, my fault. Excuse me.
Clerk has reported that there are no amendments in the system pending for committee substitute for House Bill 5024. Is that correct? If not, the bill will be advanced to third reading. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 5039.
Gentleman 96.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action one day.
Are there objections to postponing action one day on the bill? No objections are heard. Bill will be postponed by 1 day. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5238, mandating that all courts provide adjudication for juvenile offenders for traffic violations to the Division of Motor Vehicles.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced. Next bill on second reading.
House Bill 5280.
Gentleman 96.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action one day.
Are there objections to postponing action 1 day on the bill? No objections are heard. Bill will be postponed by 1 day. Next bill on second reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5544, relating to requiring certain reporting from the Mountaineer Trail Network Authority each year.
Are there amendments? If not, the bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5606.
Gentleman 96.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action one day.
Gentleman action to postpone action 1 day on the bill. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Action on the bill will be postponed by 1 day. Are there further bills on second reading? If not, bills on first reading.
Senate Bill 172, revising requirements of local school improvement councils.
Bill will be advanced.
Senate Bill 658, supplementing and amending appropriations to Department of Administration Public Defender Services.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5031, relating to human trafficking.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5043, relating to requirements, prohibitions, and regulation of foreign principals or agents of foreign principals, lobbying by or on behalf of such foreign principals or their agents.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5162, establish a program to promote creation and expansion of registered apprenticeship programs.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5180, removing requirements to submit certain evidence on behalf of homeschooled children.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5235, to double the criminal penalty for anyone found guilty of sexual assault on a minor.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5245.
Gentleman 96.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action one day.
Gentleman ask unanimous consent to postpone action 1 day on the bill. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Action on the bill will be postponed by 1 day. Next bill on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5395, relating to judicial review of board decisions.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5520 relating to juvenile competency.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5536.
Gentleman 96.
Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that we postpone action one day.
Are there objections to postponing action one day on the bill? No objections are heard. Bill will be postponed by 1 day. Next bill on first reading.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5561 relating to permitting the electronic execution of trusts.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5569 requiring an appraiser to pay for a background check required by the AMC as a condition of being added to the AMC's panel of appraisers.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5582 modifying exceptions for real estate appraisal licensure.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5593 relating to the creation, composition, qualifications, and compensation of the State Board of Risk and Insurance Management.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5621 prohibiting the termination of employment of an employee who defends themselves from an attack inside the workplace.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5647 increasing and maintaining the bracketed tax rates on the privilege of establishing or operating a health maintenance organization.
Bill will be advanced.
Committee substitute for House Bill 5662 relating to adding person in a position of trust to certain crimes.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5690 creating a West Virginia task force on artificial intelligence.
Bill will be advanced.
House Bill 5694 relating to firearms.
Bill will be advanced. We have other bills on first reading. If not, leaves for what purpose of the gentleman of 39th Douglas Smith seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor in House Bill 5694.
5694. Is there space available on the bill? The chair's advised there is not space available on the bill. Leaves of absence. Gentleman 25th, Douglas Hornbuckle.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I ask unanimous consent for my remarks on House Bill 4299 to be printed in the appendix of the journal.
Are there objections? No objections are heard. Gentleman's remarks will be so printed. For what purpose does the lady in the 49th seek recognition? Doug Tully.
Request unanimous consent to be added to House Bill 4909, please.
Is there space available on the bill? Chair's advised there is space available on the bill. Are there objections? Lady's name will be so added. For what purpose does the gentleman in the 53rd Douglas Pritz seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask unanimous consent to be added as a co-sponsor to House Bill 4909 as well.
The chair's advised there is space available on the bill. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Gentleman will be so added. Introductions. Introductions, miscellaneous business. Miscellaneous business. Gentleman with the 96th.
Mr. Speaker, I move subject to announcement that the House adjourn until 11 a.m. tomorrow.
Are there announcements? Gentleman with the 96th.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Rules will meet tomorrow morning at 10:45 in the Members' Lounge.
Gentleman with the 97th, Douglas Hardy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Finance will meet today, February 21st, 45 minutes after floor session in the Finance Committee room for a committee meeting. Republican members will caucus 30 minutes after floor session in the Finance Committee room. The agenda is posted. Also, Mr. Speaker, your Finance Committee will meet tomorrow, February 22nd at 9 a.m. in the Finance Committee room for a committee meeting. Republican members will meet at 8:45 in the Finance Committee room, and the agenda will be posted. Mr. Speaker, may I address the House just for a second?
Are there any objections to the gentleman being granted permission to address the House? If there are no objections are heard, gentleman may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd just like to take this time to apologize to the House for my actions yesterday. I got a little caught up in a piece of legislation that I didn't agree with, and I let my emotions take hold, and I offered the secondary action on the bill that was done out of anger, and for that, I'm a better delegate than that, and for that, I ask for your forgiveness, and I'll try not to let that happen again on the floor. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman 8, Douglas Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Judiciary Committee will meet today at 3 o'clock
in the House Judiciary Committee room. Republicans will caucus at 3 o'clock in the chairman's room, and the agenda is posted for that meeting. Also, Mr. Speaker, the committee will meet tomorrow, that's Thursday, February 22nd, at 9:30. Republican members will caucus 20 minutes before the meeting at 9:10, and the agenda will be posted. And also, just a reminder to the Judiciary Committee members, there is lunch upstairs to be served. If you haven't eaten yet, it's there.
Gentleman the first, Delegate McGeehan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Government Organization is going to meet today at 4 o'clock p.m. in the Government Organization Committee room. Republicans caucus in the chair's office at 3:45. The agenda is posted. Your Committee on Government Organization will also meet this Friday at 9 a.m. in the Government Organization Committee room. Republicans caucus 8:45 a.m. in the chair's office. The agenda will be posted.
Gentleman the eighth.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me do this again. It's always great to do this. We're going to meet today at 3:30. We'll caucus in the chairman's room at 3. Thank you, sir.
Lady from the 49th, Delegate Tully.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Health and Human Resources will meet tomorrow, Thursday, February 22nd, tentatively at 3 p.m. in the East Wing Committee Room. Republican members will caucus in the chair's office at 2:30 prior to the meeting. The agenda will be posted, and please bring your laptops. Thank you.
Gentleman the 43rd, Delegate Tony.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Education will meet today at 2:45 in the Education Committee Room. The agenda is posted.
Lady from the 71st, Delegate Kimball.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I, too, ask unanimous consent to be added to 4909 as a sponsor if there is room.
Is there space available on the bill? There is space available. Are there objections? No objections are heard. Lady's name will be so added.
Thank you.
Gentleman the 21st, Delegate Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Technology and Infrastructure will meet tomorrow, February 22nd, aspirationally at 1 p.m. in the House Education Committee room. The agenda will be posted.
Gentleman the 99th, Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Your Committee on Economic Development and Tourism will meet tomorrow at 3 p.m. in the House Judiciary Room for the purpose of a presentation.
Are there additional announcements at this time? Gentleman the 100th, Delegate Ridenhour. House will be in order. We still have other announcements. Gentleman the 100th.
Mr. Speaker, your Judiciary Subcommittee on House Bill 4994 will meet today after session. In addition, I request that my comments on HCRs 7, 12, 19, and 20 be included in the journal, and I recommend that the delegate from the 27th also consider having his remarks on HCR 37.
Are there objections to the remarks being added? No objections are heard. Those will be added to the appendix of the journal. Are there, Gentleman, the location for the meeting, Delegate?
The location of the meeting will be in the Vice Chairman's of Judiciary's office. Thank you.
Gentleman the 27th, Delegate Griffith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate Delegate Ridenhour's suggestion, and I so ask.
Are there objections to the gentleman's comments being added to the appendix of the journal? No objections are heard. Gentleman the 27th's comments will be so added. Are there other announcements? Are there other announcements? If not, the questions on the motion that the House adjourns at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Those in favor of the motion will please say aye. Those opposed will please say no. The ayes have it. The motion is adopted. We are adjourned at 11 a.m. tomorrow.